Welcome. This is Cyber Power of Tigray. Welcome, Dr. Seifu Mengesha, and welcome, Mr. Mike Kasahun. Today, we will please introduce yourself for my audience, and we will have a discussion regarding war on Tigray. So it's your turn, Mr. Let's start with Dr. Yosef to introduce yourself for my audience first. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Ephrem. My name is Seifu Mengesha. I'm an internal medicine resident practicing at the University of Washington. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. And please, Mr. Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Ephrem, for the invitation. My name is Michael Kasahun. I am a University of Oregon graduate and currently work at the University of Oregon. I am a citizen of this country by paper and by heart. I am Ethiopian American, however you want to categorize it. And I look forward and talking to you guys, and nice to meet you, Dr. Seifu.
Nice to meet you too.
Great, thank you. So today, my first question will be, there is a war in Ethiopia at this time. Do you think that the war just erupted, or do you think there is a preparation? I have heard a lot of things that the Tigrayan main freeways has been blocked by several Amhara militias, and then the federal government has never done anything to do the law for the law enforcement to open the freeways. That's his job, the federal government, to open all the main roads. But the Tigray people has been blocked for more than 2 years. And there are other indicators that the federal government has been prepared to do war with Tigray people. So, and then after that, the war just started. Do you think the war is over now? Because the federal government has said the war is stopped already. But we have heard there is a lot of war going on, and there are some Air Force jets has been thrown away from the sky a couple of today and a couple of days ago. So could you please tell us the current political situation and previously how the war starts? I will start with Dr. Seifu first. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ephrem, again. As you have correctly mentioned, the war on Tigray started, I would say, 2 or 2.5 years ago. And there are steps to war. And as you mentioned, there were many preparations that were officially mentioned by the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, Dr. Abiy Ahmed. And that includes the main highway that takes to Tigray was closed for 2.5 years. And the federal government chose not to act. And there were ethnic Tigrayans were being targeted by the federal government. A lot of Tigrayans were arrested for political reasons in the last 2.5 years. A lot of Tigrayans have been shamed and fired from their jobs for no reason other than being a Tigrayan. All government media, government-owned media in Ethiopia have been doing a grave propaganda against the people of Tigray and making documentaries about how Tigrinya speakers are killers. And most recently, about a year ago, there has been budgetary cuts towards Tigray. And as if Tigray is a separate country, many goods were not allowed to go to Tigray, including instruments that were bought to fight the locusts in Tigray. So, of course, there was signs of war going on for the last 2.5 years, supported by the things I mentioned. And most recently, when the Ethiopian government unlawfully and unconstitutionally decided to postpone and delay the election in Ethiopia, which happens every 5 years, giving the reason of COVID-19, despite many other countries, including the US, having even more COVID-19 going ahead with their elections, the Ethiopian government unilaterally decided to postpone the election. And during this time, it didn't just postpone the election. The government tried to arrest all powerful opposition party leaders. And when the Tigrayan people decided to go ahead with their own local election using their constitution, the prime minister officially using his own media intimidated Tigray that he would wage a war if Tigray was going to go forward with election. So this has been going on for a while. And as you said, most recently in November 3, it was officially Prime Minister waged war against Tigray. Weeks to days before the war was officially waged, there were people from central parts of Ethiopia, including Oromia, were mentioning that the military there was being moved towards Tigray, and the military was already on the borders of Amhara and Tigray. And then the prime minister mentioned that the Ethiopian Defense North Command in Tigray was attacked by the Tigrayans while he was already preparing for it and has already sent 2 jets to try to abduct or kidnap the legitimately elected leaders of Tigray. So the war was started earlier than November 3. And for your second question about whether the war is ended, funny enough, the prime minister called this war as a law operation. And I've never seen in my life a law operation led by military instead of a police. And I've never seen a law operation that is supported by military jets, supported by hundreds of tanks, and with frequent and multiple airstrikes on civilians and universities and factories, electric power dams. And I've never seen a law operation that you do by asking the help of another country's military, the Eritrean military. And I have never seen a law operation that you do by asking UAE to help you with its drones. So he mentioned that it was a law operation, and now about a week ago, he announced that his mission was completed. But there was no criminal arrested, and there was no any TPLF leader or Tigrayan regional government officials arrested. So the war is still going on. The people of Tigray, the civilians of Tigray are suffering a lot. Their properties are being looted. Lives of our mothers, our brothers, and our children are being taken away. And Tigray is under a complete blackout. Information-wise, there are no internet, no cell phones. All roads and all flights to Tigray are closed. I have a lot of family in Tigray, and I haven't heard from them for more than a month now, and I don't know whether they are dead or not. So there is a war on Tigray, not a war in Tigray, and it's going on.
Okay. Thank you so much, Doctor. And the same question, please, Mr. Mike. I don't know if you need me to remind you. Otherwise, if you go ahead and answer the same question, what you think about the war, how it started, and if the war is still going on on
Well,
Tigray.
sure. Thank you. I appreciate the question. No, actually, I can summarize it. I think first of all, let me say, Mr. Ephrem, if you don't mind me calling you first name, thank you for hosting this.
It's called me from, yeah. No worries.
Thank you. We appreciate all the work that you're doing. It's vital and very important for the diaspora to understand that the amount of work and effort that you have been doing to organize this and the communities throughout the Pacific Northwest and now we call in the West Coast. Dr. Seifu, you touch base in a lot of area. What I like to do is touch bases in what you very well emphasize and explain. First and foremost, there's a couple things that I want to start with. Law and order is one of the things that he abused in Amharic. We have heard law and order in America. We also have heard when the United States of America went to Iraq, how quickly it was announced the war was over when the war just had begun. So let me make it clear to the audience. What's happening in Ethiopia today in the Tigray region is very sad. It is sad because 6.5 million people are being choked by their government whose mandate expired, is turned from a democratic process, Ethiopia being the Democratic Republic of Ethiopia today, in my opinion, in my view, is Ethiopia's banana republic. And I do not apologize for the facts. We are talking millions of people, not currency, not money, but people being choked by 9 Ethiopian regional militia, 9 regional states, that is, by the federal force. And because that wasn't enough, by Eritrean forces. And because that still wasn't enough, Dr. Seifu mentioned AEU. What he was referring to is the United Arab Emirates, who has base in Eritrea, is continuously using, which is outrageous, an American-sold drone on Tigray civilian. As an American, it's a shame. The American people should be asking the question, is that how we want our weapons to be used on innocent children? Are you kidding me? You know, it's devastating. The question also you ask is, what's going on? Why did the war start? When did the war start? You talk about the blockage of roads. Let's talk about, diplomats who, demographically, let me clarify. To access Tigray, there are 2 roads from Addis Ababa, which is the capital city of Ethiopia. You can either go through the south, which leads you into Mekelle, or you can go through the far north through the Afar region to enter, and by flight. It has been very clear the war of words started a few years back. Abiy Ahmed, not the Tigray government, not other regional government in Ethiopia, dissolved EPRDF, which is the Ethiopia's democratic, the organization, the EPRDF, Ethiopia's Democratic Republic Front.
Ethiopian People's Revolutionary Democratic Front.
Thank you. That was dismantled by Abiy Ahmed without any discussion, without any consultation by all parties, those who are in support of them and those who were not in support of them. He created his own party because he was a prime minister. He thought he was above the law. And that is very dangerous. To any democratic society, that is very dangerous move. So that's number one. Number two, it has been very clear from the beginning, he started arresting top politicians who stood up and say, what you're doing is wrong. When they spoke against the way he was dealing with Isaias Afwerki of Eritrea, Eritrean president, many Ethiopian politicians not only did not trust him, but did not believe he actually was making peace. So for a killer today who's murdering his own people to be awarded a Nobel Prize for a peacemaker, the world should be ashamed of that. I am embarrassed by it. As a human being, it's embarrassing for someone to be awarded for peacemaking, and he's choking 6.5 million people as we speak. And this has been going on for the last 33 days directly, along with the United Arab Emirates bombing that have occurred constantly by the Ethiopian fighter jets, the MiGs. Some of them have been shot down. Eritrea has used its own air force, ground troops, hundreds of thousands of Eritreans. Folks, I'm not reading the internet like everyone else and making up a story here. I'm telling you the facts on the ground, what's been going on. I have witnesses as a child when I was born into the Derg era. I became displaced as a refugee to Sudan. I became an immigrant to the United States of America, a country that gave me an opportunity to get an education, to become a citizen, which I'm proud of. But my blood is back home. At the end of the day, my family, like Dr. Seifu said, it's heartbreaking. I have not spoken any of my family in the Tigray region for over a month now. The stories are the same. We don't know what's happening to our people. So, Mr. Abiy Ahmed, if you have a little heart, if you listen, would you please stop being a coward? And the award that was given to you as a peacemaker, would you please stop raining the bombs on innocent Tagaru and turn on the internet? Allow the world to enter to Ethiopia, but to the Tigray region. Let an independent investigators enter to Tigray region without any precondition to investigate the atrocity, the massacre, the civilians who were massacred, butchered by a machete by the Amhara militia in Maikadra. You, Mr. Abiy Ahmed, use your weapons of Ethiopia's human rights, a group that reports to you, that are funded by you, to turn around and say it was the Tigray youth who did that along with the Tigray militia. I don't apologize for the truth, but let me tell you something. The Tigray that I know of, the Tigray people that I know of, even when we're upset, we do not slaughter people. When we slaughter animals to eat, we slaughter them with dignity. You are slaughtering innocent people, Mr. Abiy Ahmed. To the audience who's listening to this, I'm angry. I'm hurt. My people, our people, are being choked by greed, by power trip. Abiy Ahmed is hungry for one thing, that's power. He wants to be a king of Ethiopia. He will not. Along the process, the Tigray general who served proudly for Ethiopia, most of you know, was not killed. He was assassinated. Abiy Ahmed, being a puppet of Isaias Afwerki of Eritrea, coordinated most of the logistics, arresting most politicians throughout Ethiopia, but particularly those who are ethnically based from Tigray. And he has spoken how Ethiopia has been in the dark for 27 years. Folks, let me clarify that. Ethiopia, while the political arena might not be perfect, Ethiopia has been recording roughly 10% GDP per year that exceeds China's GDP. Ethiopia was on the world stage, security-wise, economically. It was setting up the model under the very people, the Tigray people who coordinate and work with all Ethiopians. When the Amharas and the other folks who created the false narrative and say the Tigray is development is growing, the rest of Ethiopia has been destroyed in 2005, we saw it. There was a slogan saying all Tigray tribal base people should go back to Mekelle. Everything in Mekelle, we should go back and bring it to Addis Ababa. That is the best translation I can do. But in Amharic, there's a definition to which I'm not going to throw it in here. But my point here is that Abiy Ahmed, shortly after he was appointed as a prime minister, and people should also remember, he was not elected. He was appointed because there was an Oromo movement, Oromo youth movement, that have said they need more political movement that supports them, that respects their rights. And when Desalegn Hailemariam, the prime minister of Ethiopia, in 2018, submitted resignation to the Congress, to the Ethiopian House of Representatives, excuse me, it was seen one of the first and the best way to have a peaceful transition of power where Abiy Ahmed rose his hand, swear under oath to uphold the constitution in Ethiopia. Today, he's walking all over the constitution in Ethiopia.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mike. Thank you, Dr. Seifu. The next question is Brian. Now,
can I just mention one fact before you go to the next question?
Yeah, of course. But you can also, since it's all related to the next question, you can also continue to answer my question as well. Is he really, Mr. Abiy Ahmed is saying that he's going to start rebuilding Tigray and rehabilitate Tigray? So, as you say earlier, the war is still going on. And do you think this statement is true? Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. There is one sad fact that I want to mention, and that's Eritrea's involvement in this war. And just before going to Eritrea, I believe the Western media and the Western political power empowered Abiy Ahmed to be a dictator. And the reason I say that is Mr. Mike was already mentioning about the Nobel Prize. And he got this Nobel Prize for making peace with Eritrea. And time has proved that that peace, that so-called making peace, was actually preparing for war. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed created a bromance with President Isaias. Otherwise, there was no peace on the ground between Eritrea and Ethiopia. And Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed used this opportunity of preparing for war and creating this bromance with President Isaias, who is, by the way, one of the most known and dictator in the world. This is a guy that has told BBC about 20 years ago that Eritrea might not have any election for the next 30, 40 years. Nobody knows. and he kept his word. And Eritrea, for the last 30 years, hasn't had any kind of local or national election, and everything in Eritrea has been under President Isaias. And the Western world, either intentionally or unintentionally, has covered up Eritrea's involvement in this war. I was listening to Ambassador Tibor Nagy, the U.S. ambassador to U.S. Advisor to foreign affairs in Africa, mentioning that Eritrea was being patient for provocation from Tigrayan forces, while the truth is that tens of thousands of Eritrean troops have been fighting, actually more in numbers compared to the Ethiopian military in Tigray. And Eritrea has been using its air forces striking civilians, attacking civilians in Tigray. So this sad situation that is going on, which is, as some European leaders has characterized it as genocide, actually, is going on with a complete information blackout and two military forces attacking civilian Tigrayans. And this has forced more than 47,000 Tigrayans to flee their home without anything to Sudan, looking for safety. So it is a very sad situation that the world is witnessing and not acting upon. And months or years from now, this will be one of the biggest mistakes that the world is allowing to happen. It is very, very, very heartbreaking. And it just makes me feel so embarrassed by the so-called international institutions, including the United Nations and the African Union, for them not acting. Going to your second question about the Prime Minister mentioning that he's trying to rebuild Tigray, it just shows how the level of, you know, he is a dictator that he just really, really underestimates his people. How are you going to build a country or a region while you're bombing its universities, while you're bombing its civilians, while you're bombing its religious institutions, while you are bombing its hospitals, and while you are bombing all the big infrastructures in Tigray? And you have created a complete blackout so that the world will not witness. So I don't know what kind of government would prohibit the media, the international media, from witnessing if the government is trying to do good things like building a region. So it couldn't be far from the truth. Thank you.
Well, I want to jump in there real quick before the next question comes up, if I may. So first of all,
which is the same question anyways.
Thank you. Dr. Seifu touched a lot of areas. I think what I would say to what you have stated is that I think the world, I'm afraid, doesn't pay attention too much about African politics and doesn't care as much as we would like to see happen. And the reason I say this to you folks is I was in high school in 1995 in Fresno, California, when the Rwanda massacre took place.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I remember a general from serving under the United Nations from Canada asking the UN for 3,000 troops to stop the massacre. That general was kicked out of Rwanda for speaking up and asking 3,000 troops to stop the massacre and sent back to Canada. And only then later, to your point, Dr. Seifu, that the world felt embarrassed that they did nothing. On the other hand, we saw what happened to Milosevic of Yugoslavia. Except the difference is Yugoslavia happens to be in Europe. And Ethiopia today happens to be in Africa. So if America and Europe cares, and they should, the power in their hand. The U.S. State Department, by the way, I have been in touch with some of the folks. Pompeo has been calling Abiy Ahmed. It is fair to say he's telling him he's got his back to murder Tagaro. It's pure, clear, and simple. Because if America and the world cares, United Nations doesn't meet up and say, oh, we're not going to do anything, or we're going to let the African Union take the role and watch nearly today close to 50,000 innocent civilians enter into Sudan as refugees, fearing for their lives. And yet you have Eritreans, Amhara militia, and the federal force from Ethiopia blocking a border for civilians who are trying to flee from a war zone that a delusional central government prime minister of Ethiopia declare the war has ended. In fact, he's losing more troops on a regular basis than he can count. So the battlefield that he won, first of all, is just beginning. When the Tigray leadership decided to withdraw from Mekelle, that was not a war fought and defeated. They saw, and we saw, that civilians in Mekelle being bombed in Adigrat, in various cities throughout and villages throughout Tigray. The most recent we saw, the MiG-23, Russian-made, was in a village bombing civilians when it was shot down, when the pilot was captured after he ejected from the fighter jet. You mentioned earlier what happened prior to November 4th. Let's clarify the fact here. The fact of the matter is, several weeks before November 4th, Isaias Afwerki and Abiy Ahmed met. They don't even want to use their top leaders to communicate about the war. They them alone, want to make sure nothing got out and planned it. And hundreds of thousands of Ethiopian troops were flown into Asmara to join the Eritrean forces in Hamara, in Badme, in Zalambesa, Sorona, which is part of Eritrea, through Shire. They came through every front. They were prepared to eat up. And that's why he said, with 140,000 Eritrean troops, with more than 250 Ethiopian troops, he thought the region of Tigray, he had it like a little handball in his hand, that he was going to go in and capture the leaders of Tigray, destroy the infrastructure in Tigray. In 3 days, folks, don't forget, he said he will get the top leaders in Tigray arrested and bring them to justice. And the reality of it is that he sent special forces that we know from Mekelle using 2 planes that landed in Mekelle. His lies were, I sent 2 planes to exchange the currency that I had initially changed. In fact, there were special commando, several hundred of them, that were flown to Mekelle to go in to capture Dr. Debretsion, the Tigray president, Getachew Reda, his advisor, and I can go on. He had 39 top government officials from Tigray, which later he extended to 72. But originally, he wanted to kill or arrest 39 top leaders from the Tigray region. And the Tigray leadership or the Tigray people's crime is for upholding the constitution of Ethiopia. When he failed to hold the election, they chose to hold an election to uphold their due process election, which we all value in the United States of America, in Europe, and in most democratic society. So when the Tigray people spoke peacefully, they didn't like that because Eritrea has been under dictatorship for how long we know. Eritrean president is training his son to be the next president when he dies. That happens in North Korea. That's what we've seen. So are we waiting for Ethiopia to become another North Korea, or are we going to see for Ethiopia to become in pieces? Because he's massacring our civilian in Tigray. But what he doesn't understand is he will not get away with it. He will not get away with murdering civilians and creating a mass grave for them to be somehow forgotten. We will not forget those innocent who are suffering, who are being murdered on the hands of tyranny. And the fact of the matter is, when an Ethiopian government who has no mandate to serve as a central government invites foreign forces, it is a gross violation for any Ethiopian, my fellow Amhara people, Oromo people, Afar. So name it all. Shame on you guys. Shame on you guys. Shame on you guys. You are allowing your people, your tribes, to go fight your own people. I'm your person. I might be fluent in Tigrinya, but I can also speak Amharic. But I should not be singled out based on my ethnicity. That should be, Ethiopia prides on its long history. You talk about how Ethiopia's history not been colonized, how we defeated, the European colony. What's irony is, if the Amhara prides itself, or the Oromo, about how Ethiopia always stood, the victory of Adwa, the last time I checked the map, Adwa still remains in Tigray, by the way, for the record. So if people understand what the Tigray people are all about, the Tigray people are peace-loving, peacemaking people. But when pushed, they will stand, because at the end of the day, if you come to my house to kill me, I'm going to try to kill you before you kill me. That's exactly what's happening in Tigray. When the central government, who has no mandate once again, sent his special forces to Mekelle, he failed. The forces in Mekelle, the regional forces, not only were they able to defeat that, but anyone that want to overthrow democratically elected regional government, yes, were taken from their post and removed. The central government's excuse that a federal troops base was invaded by Tigray military, therefore that's why he took action, that's a baloney. This guy he's not even a good liar. He doesn't even know how to lie good. That's not really what happened. The blockage of diplomats, the list goes on and on and on. The fact, though, is the Ethiopian people will wake up tomorrow, soon, will see the grave mistake that they're making. So I challenge every Ethiopian to wake up, to tell your loved ones back home from the diaspora, tell the people that you know that so many beautiful young men and women fighting in Tigray, their bodies out in the streets. There's not even people around to bury your so-called tribal people. You think you're celebrating, you open a champagne, raising your flag on Facebook, celebrating that you defeated somebody? Who are you fighting? Your own people? The Tigray people are not your people? You fighting them and you celebrating? Shame on you. I am really beyond heartbroken of what I've seen in the country that I used to call my country, Ethiopia. It is embarrassing to the world. It's beyond imaginable that 33 days later we are still standing by for the world to do something and nothing is happening. So a lot of the points that we made, there is gross human rights violation taking place and continuously happening in Tigray region of Ethiopia. By the way, I want to remind the audience, some Americans I spoke with have asked me, well, why did the Tigray people want to separate from Ethiopia? Let me tell you something. Tigray did not ask for separation. Tigray only did vote for statehood, which we do in America. We have 50 states. Every state, we have governors. When we elect our governors, the federal government does not get involved. It is purely, in my home state, the state of Oregon, we elect our own governor. We elect our city officials, and we don't get outsiders to tell us what to do. And that's exactly what the Tigray people did in Ethiopia. So I want to make that very clear to the audience that the victim, which are the Tigray people, are being falsely accused of potentially trying to split from Ethiopia. Article 39 of the Ethiopian Constitution does permit and allow for any state in Ethiopia, which is why Eritrea became a country in 1993 when Eritreans voted. However, there was no discussion in Tigray splitting from Ethiopia. We, the Tigray people in the diaspora and back home, only want peace, a democratically elected central government, and the Tigray leadership made it very clear from the get-go that despite our mistakes that we have made in the past, we will gladly and happily accept a democratically elected prime minister to govern Ethiopia. It is precisely when the prior prime minister resigned that the Tigray leadership did not interfere, accepted Abiy Ahmed's role as a transitional prime minister, and that turnaround has been nothing but devastating for the Tigray people, only because they have chosen to elect a person. Now Abiy Ahmed wants to install handpicked person to run the Tigray region. That's shame.
Thank you. So at the same time, before you finish your speech, I was going to ask you the same question that I asked for Doctor. Do you think? I mean, it's obvious, but Mr. Abiy Ahmed is saying that he's going to rebuild the nation. I don't know if that's the thing, but there is no rehabilitation. I don't think he's going to rebuild because he's still fighting. He said the war is already over, but the war is still going on, and there are some invaders already inside in Tigray from Eritrea. Their Eritrean troops has been captured. They have some evidences, but he said that in a real his generals, they are saying on the other medias, we don't have no any support. We can finish the Tigrayan troops by ourselves. But when he say on the parliament, he said, I'm so glad that I have a good relationship with Eritrean government because
I think we might have lost an audio. Yep. I believe we lost audio connection with Ephrem.
I think the internet was a little bit interrupted. Yeah. So the involvement of other countries, if you can mention those stuff, do we have any other involvement?
Sure. Well,
I mean, have you seen any captured or from the video or from the interview from Eritrean troops or others? So we just need us to confirm these three things. Thank you so much.
Well, I appreciate the question. There's no question whether or not there is Eritrea's involvement or United Arab Emirates involvement in Tigray today. In fact, we also know that Abiy Ahmed, the Ethiopian prime minister, had asked South Sudan for 4,000 troops because he was desperate. So that isn't the question. I think the question obviously is, why is this even happening? Why are we doing this? I think the fact before I go on to elaborate on that, you asked another question, whether or not he's going to rebuild Tigray. If innocent civilians weren't being massacred, weren't being murdered, I would have laughed and I would have told you, like, this is a joke. But this is not a time for us to laugh and to joke. And I'm serious, because it hurts. It hurts that, like, those of us in the diaspora from the Tigray region can't send money to help our family, can't help our people. Folks, we're talking about life and death here. There's a mission that has been accomplished, which is Abiy Ahmed brought in not a few thousands, but over 140,000 Eritrean troops. Not only have fought alongside, but have actually came. And the sad reality of it is that in various towns from Adigrat to Adwa, Aksum, Shire, not only did they actually remove so many of the infrastructure, loaded up and took it to Eritrea, but they've been told anything that you cannot take, to make sure you destroy it. So if the Ethiopian people are sober and listening to these facts, you are bringing a foreign forces to invade your people, your land, our land, to allow the infrastructure of Tigray to be destroyed. Mm-hmm. And we don't have to elaborate on a lot of these things. We can solve this problem very simply. Turn on the internet. Let the world enter to Tigray, see what's happening. We, in the diaspora, could work and facilitate and to work with the Tigray regional government, if the Ethiopian government is willing to communicate, and to bring in an independent folks from outside. Not Abiy Ahmed or Isaias Afwerki's puppets, but outside folks who are independent, who can see what's happening on the ground for themselves. When he says no civilian have died, yet his own human rights watchdog say 600 in one area has been massacred, when there is fact-based Eritrean soldiers captured, interviewed, discussing how initially they didn't even understand why they were coming to fight. They were rounded up. As recent as a week ago, Eritrea just ordered anyone up to the age of 60 to join the armed forces because they're running low too. When the Tigray regional government retaliated in bombing Dr. Seifu mentioned earlier, Asmara, America cried wolf. Let me tell you something. When 140,000 plus Eritrean troops are murdering the Tigray people, destroying the infrastructure, and yet the Eritrean airport is used for fighter jets to fly from, because it's very close to the Tigray region, to bomb civilians in Tigray, and you expect the Tigray government to not respond? I think to me, it is obvious when the Amhara, the Ethiopian general, he said they have dismantled every weapon in Tigray and that they don't have any weapons. Yet they complain when Bahardar, which was another airport used for the Air Force to bomb civilians in Tigray, was also taken out. Gondar. And you think the Eritrean government is going to sit on the side when his airport is being targeted and taken out because the Ethiopian Air Force was utilizing it? The financial toll, what's happening throughout Tigray, to say it's sad, it's minimizing it. But what is further sad is the human toll. So therefore, I beg to differ from a lot of the folks who don't get the point, who don't understand what's happening in Tigray. I would invite any reasonable mind leaders around the world to pressure the Abiy Ahmed and Isaias Afwerki's leadership to stop the bombing, for the United Nations to allow United Arab Emirates to use drones on civilians. We need a independent, without any bias, body from outside, and for the United States to fund the investigators to go to Ethiopia, to Tigray, and investigate what's happening. Then we don't have to disagree on anything, because the Tigray diaspora and the Ethiopian diaspora, we don't have to argue about this. Yes, Abiy Ahmed controls nearly every social media in Ethiopia. His propaganda machine is out there. The $9 billion that was given to him a year and a half ago from the World Bank and the United States has been utilized to slaughter innocent Tigray people. So the fight that the Tigray people, 6.5 million people, are fighting, 9 regional states in Ethiopia, the federal troops from Ethiopia, Eritrea, and drones from the United Arab Emirates are the ones fighting a regional government who only wants to see peace and stability. Which, by the way, I would mention, Tigray was the only state since Abiy Ahmed took power that remained in the peace and stability. It was the safest, most secure state throughout Ethiopia, throughout Africa, by far. There has been no this crazy murdering and ransacking and all these things that we have seen like throughout Ethiopia, people being displaced. Eritrean government saw that, and that was a threat. Abiy Ahmed saw that, and that was a threat, because the leadership who left Addis Ababa and say, you know what, we have not served our people, we're packing up, going back, and we're not becoming one party, one language. Folks, history is repeating again. Mengistu Haile Selassie attempted to consolidate power to create one language in Ethiopia. That is not how it works. That is not how it works. And you will not get away with choking and attempting to slaughter hundreds and hundreds of thousands of innocent civilians from the Tigray region. And I think we need to mobilize, speak up, counter the truth when the lies and the falsifications are spreading like a wild west fire. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, my next question will be, thank you so much, Mr. Mike. There are multiple Tigrayans displaced at this time. They left their own place, the Tigray place, because they are scared to be, like you say, it's louders from Amhara militias, from Abiy soldiers. They've been killed. There's a lot of threat. So they are living in Sudan, refugee. And they have testified that they have seen murdering their own family members and their friends by Amhara militia and by the Abiy government. And but there are rumors that we heard that Abiy Ahmed is trying to get all these people back to their own place. He said that he's going to help them to stabilize and to start their own life. But as a refugee, do you think this is a violation when someone is scared to leave, when someone is uh, asking asylum politically? There are some political instability. There is some genocide already noticed when they want us to stay away from that country, and he's trying to get them back to where they came from. Do you think this is internationally a violation of the human right? Please, Dr. Seifu, answer this question first, and then we'll go to Mr. Mike. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Think that the same.
I cannot hear you. I think your earphone battery is dead or something. The sound. Maybe you can just use from your computer without using that. Just turn that off and then go back to.
Can you hear me now?
Still. Yeah, you go ahead, Mike, and can you can go ahead and charge your earphone.
Me now?
Okay, I cannot hear you. Go ahead, Mr. Mike.
Well, so while Dr. Saifu corrects his audio, I think what's important is that it is easier to lie. It's easier to bring the refugees back because they're the only sources that now we can get facts from the ground what they witnessed. But if you bring them into the country and you hold the barrel or the barrel of the gun over their head, it's easy to control the narrative and to continue the cover up and the lies. It will be gross violation for Sudan not to safeguard and protect the refugees in Sudan. There's an obligation by the United Nations to safeguard at any time a refugee is enter a country. So there's no question whether or not it's a violation. But I think the question more is that why is a federal government who is unable to gather up his own dead soldiers from the streets of Tigray is telling us that they can return home and they could be at peace when yet millions of people in Tigray, we don't know what's happening. So if he's really realistic about this, if he wants to solve the problem, let the world enter to Tigray. Let us see what's happening in Tigray when we know that, in fact, there's electricity, there's internet, there's basic medical equipment throughout the region for people to get treatment, for pregnant women to adequately give birth at hospitals throughout Tigray. Then you do the next stage of bringing refugees back to resettle. But because it doesn't look good on him, seeing refugee, by the way, I just saw earlier on CNN that the numbers, even though they have declined because they blocked the border, they have not managed to control all the rugged mountains of Tigray border to Sudan. That refugees a couple days ago were entering between 400 to 500 a day. Now it's up about 800 a day. So we have increased number of refugees on a daily basis that are still entering to Sudan. So once they enter to Sudan, to send us back or to force them back will be a gross human right violation. So I think it makes sense, the narrative, though. In one hand, he can control the narrative if he can bring the people who are being victim of the war from Sudan into Ethiopia, into Tigray, because he doesn't care about them. He doesn't care about their safety. He doesn't care if they're going hungry or what's happening to them, because if he does, the areas he alleged and claimed he controls, why aren't the United Nations in? Why aren't the humanitarian aids in right now providing basic? I mean, Dr. Seifu can help us in this. The hospitals that are running low on basic needs, what is the concern for him now? So instead of the lies and the lies, he should look at himself in the mirror. While from what I heard, his own wife, his own children are comfortably living in Denver, Colorado. So if that's to be true, shame on them too. As a mother, his wife should be disgraced about this. When other children are dying, when other children are going hungry, catching this simple disease that is preventable, the displacement of my people, our people, is not okay. It is not okay for any Ethiopians to celebrate while their own people are dying and they are being dismissive of innocent people. It's a shame. I am appalled and I'm disgusted. For those of you who are watching, for those of you who know me through running, this isn't my first interview on TV or on social media. I'm familiar with it. I'm embarrassed for you. Those of you who used to consider me friend, it is a shame that I consider you my people as an Ethiopian up until now. But since November 4th, I have learned your true color. I am so disappointed and I'm so sad how a double life you have lived. While you hate me because I'm from Tigray, you pretended you've been my friend for over 30 years in this country. I know that I'm taking up a lot of your time, but I want I'm emphasizing the Amhara group because they are the most driven people to wipe out the Tigray people, and somehow they want to take the land that the Tigray people have lived peacefully side by side and welcomed them, meaning the Amhara tribe. The Amhara tribes that live throughout Tigray, they are loved the same way as anyone. When I go to Tigray, when I used to visit Tigray, I've been loved, and I've seen whether you're from Oromo, no matter what tribe, you're welcome. You're respected the same way. That's what we know that's what I know about the culture in Tigray. That's what I know about the people of Tigray. The people of Tigray does not build hate towards other ethnics. They respect and love all ethnics, all people in Ethiopia. But today, you are celebrating while you watch massacre by your militia. And I am so appalled by it. Dr. Yosef, I apologize. It was your turn to speak. I took your spot. I think you were having audio problems, so I will pass it on to you, sir.
No worries. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. We can hear you now better. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
You can continue, please. Yeah.
Yeah, it's I just missed half of Mr. Mike's speech, but it's so interesting that the same guy was the reason why these refugees fled their own family and house and property back home and crossed the border to Sudan. Then he has the moral to invite them back, while he is the main reason why that happened. And this same guy who tried to stop them on the borders, and this is reported by a lot of international media, including UN itself, that the Ethiopian soldiers are attempting to stop refugees from crossing borders to Sudan. The same guy who told them they can't cross is now inviting them back. And the same guy who sent his party people, the Prosperity Party, which is the party which was created by the Prime Minister, sent his people to intimidate them while they are in Sudan, because these refugees has been the main reason why. I was just watching a France 24 documentary. Their stories are so sad. And these people was Tigrinya speaking, some of them English speaking students, women, children. There was a child, 12-year-old girl, who just left her grandma behind and just walked to Sudan. So this refugees has been exposing his atrocities, and he wanted them back. And this same guy who just said in his parliament speech that there is no woman or child as a refugee in Sudan. It's just young men, and he wants them back and then arrested. While UNHCR says 45% of them are women. So this same guy who is basically shamelessly telling the world that he is after any breathing Tigray. And I was reading another article by BBC about how Tigrayans has been ethnically targeted from the Ethiopian Airlines. Many Tigrayans have been fired in the last couple of weeks. His own human rights director, Daniel Bakala, who is just one of his propagandists, has said Tigrayans, he has got multiple reports from Tigrayans being ethnically targeted in Addis Ababa. So this guy was even after the WHO director, Dr. Tedros Adhanom, just for being Tigray. If this guy can label the WHO director who lives in Europe a criminal, just imagine what would he do to a Tigrayan in Addis Ababa or elsewhere in Ethiopia who doesn't agree with him. This guy is after even any person who speaks good about Tigrayans or who criticizes his deeds, including the same person who nominated him for the Nobel Prize, Professor Awal Alo, who is an academician in Keele University in the UK. He has officially announced that he wants to arrest him. So, of course, he wants the refugees back so that he can cover up all his atrocities, because these same refugees are exposing the things that he thought were going to be unnoticed because he blocked everything. So, of course, the question is not about whether this is an international violation. Of course it is, but the sad part is that the international community has enough evidence to prove that this guy is a pathological liar when he said no civilian has died in Tigray. That's very funny. There are international organizations like aid workers who were killed in the western part of Tigray. Forget the regular Tigrayans. He killed 19 people in Mekelle in the same day just by artillery and airstrikes. So this guy is a pathological liar who tells us there is no woman and child in Sudan as a refugee, and the world knows this. So what's sad rather is that the international community wouldn't do anything on time to stop this guy. And I know the main people who can stop this guy are the Tigrayans. They're the ones who are being attacked, and they're going to be the ones who are going to defend themselves. But this whole crisis can be ended just by one phone call from the US. Because I know for sure he wouldn't do all this if he didn't know that they have his back. So this guy was given the confidence to do all the things he's doing because of adorations from the Western world and the international community. So this can be stopped just by a phone call from the international community. So it's very sad to witness this. And it's very sad to see Ethiopia is being the next Yugoslavia. Thank you.
Appreciate it, Doctor. Thank you so much. The next will be, I think if you guys can say something about the World Food Program, and also if you can have some message for Tigray defense forces, for Tigray people, for Ethiopian, not Ethiopian, but Tigray diaspora especially, how to defend this war, the genocide war against Tigrayans, and the real Eritrean supporters of Tigray. And if you have anything that we didn't mention in our discussion today, please continue to speak, Mr. Mike, and then I will go after you to Dr. Seifu. Thank you so much.
Sure. Well, I think first and foremost, the world should by now know that Abiy Ahmed has not won the war. What you have is a continuous crisis throughout Tigray. He thinks he defeated the Tigray regional government by simply seeing the regional government decided to be level-headed by removing forces from Mekelle to save the city and, most importantly, the civilian in Mekelle. If we all remember, what we have not mentioned here is that he gave 72 hours in Mekelle, nearly 500,000 people who already had no access to the internet, TV, which comes along with power because the power was shut off. He bombed the Tekeze Dam, which is a river that the Mekelle citizens, the folks throughout that region survive from, was bombed. And when the Tigray government fixed the damage, then they went back and destroyed it again. So the running water was cut off. There was no electricity, which hydropower was generated from that dam. Yet he announced civilians in Mekelle should get into shelter because he was going to bomb and destroy everything that stood on his way. So had the Tigray leadership remain in the city and the forces from the Tigray region remain in the city, he was determined to kill 500,000 people. And sadly, the world wasn't going to do anything about it. But the leadership in Tigray, they've been in politics long enough to understand. They saw what was happening, they know what was coming, and they saved the city by removing the military from Mekelle and themselves. What is true is over 95% of the Tigray population lives mostly in the countryside. The federal government delusional story, it purely lacks facts. This guy can fool us, can lie to us, but that's too late to the game. He's too late to this game. He has miscalculated the will of the people in Tigray. The fighting is only intensifying as we speak. Abiy Ahmed's troops, Eritrean troops, have only entered to pockets of cities to loot, to steal, to destroy, including what we have discussed earlier, main infrastructures, to weaken the Tigray infrastructure and economy. So the message I have for the folks back home, all Tagaras throughout Ethiopia outside Tigray, that you may have access and ability to hear this, we're fighting for you. We're standing up for you. We're not sleeping. We're speaking loud and clear the atrocity that Abiy Ahmed is doing to our people. We're going to do everything within our power to assist to the people of Tigray, to those of you who are being harassed, arrested, tortured based on your ethnicity, based on being from Tigray. We feel your pain. We hear your cries. We're crying with you, but we are fighting. We're standing for you. We hear you. We understand you. Don't give up hope. Don't give up. To the folks that have no access to this, we're going to pray for them. We're going to figure out a way for this atrocity to end. For the rest, Tagaru, throughout the world, in the diaspora, those of you who speak Tigrinya, those of you who speak Amharic, those of you who speak English, and multiple languages throughout the world, no matter what language you speak, never stop being proud of Tigroiti, meaning you are the product of Tigray. You are the people of Tigray. So standing up, fighting for justice, for human rights, for Tagaru lives to matter, we must unite together. Tagaru lives matter. To my Eritrean brothers and sisters, we have seen war after war. During Derg, your brothers and sisters spent 30 plus years of fighting for freedom. The freedom that you fought for, you did not get it. Eritrea became one man's country. We feel your pain. Tigray government, Tigray people welcome any Eritreans, whether it be soldier, civilian, that have entered to Tigray, and they have seen it. You have seen it. You have been sending to your families throughout Tigray money supporting. The refugees from Eritrea have been integrating throughout Tigray, rebuilding communities and businesses throughout Tigray. They became one, united, because our common enemy is the Amhara elite who wants to get rid of our language, who hates us the fact that you, the Eritreans, have seaport access, that they have hated us, thinking that we, the Tigray people, will let you have your freedom, but that was under the Ethiopian constitution. Your own government of Eritrea have said, let alone to live alongside the Amhara, we could not even go begging for anything with the Amhara. That is a mistrust. The Amhara cannot be trusted. What I've learned in this era, in 2020, is I'm not trying to speak hate, but I'm going to speak fact. I have no faith. I cannot trust any Amhara. I do not have faith on you. Therefore, when you look on my Facebook, what I have on my back wall, it says, Tagaru lives matter. I have been advocating and protesting for Black lives to matter in the United States of America. No matter how light my skin is, I'm a Black man in America. But today, I switched my gear from Black Lives Matter in America to Tagaru Lives Matter in Tigray. So for the diaspora, whether you're from Eritrea, from Tigray, let us unite together. Let us stand together. No matter what region you are, no matter how small your communities are, unite, stand together. Don't let the lies spread by the Amhara, by the rest of the propaganda machine, that they're winning, that somehow they're going to succeed, they're going to rebuild Tigray. No, their mission is to destroy Tigray. We know that. So, to summarize, I want each and every one of you, Tagaru, Eritreans to stand together, to write emails, letters, get on the phone, call your congresswoman, congressmen in every state in the United States of America and around the world, to your lawmakers, get on the phone, talk to them, tell them that your people, my people, our people cannot breathe. They have not been able to breathe for 33 days. They're starving to death. They've been choked by a government whose mandate expired and is trying to rule Ethiopia by the barrel of the gun. And we know what that does. So before further massacre, before we see more people losing their lives at the hands of a fascist government who can only be described as Hitler, is determined to kill as many people, no matter how young they are, how old they are. His goal is to accomplish for him in becoming a dictator. He knows he cannot become a dictator until he can figure out a way to eliminate the Tigray people. What is fact, though, is when it comes to fighting, the Tigray people are fighting to defend their homes, fighting to defend their ground. They're not going invading anybody. So when it comes to defending, I was born into war. I know how my people fight. I know how my people stand for. But what I want is not a fight to continue. I want peace. I want this to stop. I want our voices to be very clear. We demand our American politicians, for those of you in the United States of America, those of you in Canada, those of you in Australia, throughout Europe, Asia, that you are listening to this, please speak to your elected officials, unite as one, organize communities, protest, build the pressure. Let us fight together. We have a long road ahead of us, but we are determined to not give up. I'm not giving up. And no Tigray that I know is going to give up. So with that hope, I want those of you who we often hold Zooms. When we do, we speak in Tigrinya. I want you, the young people particularly, who speaks native language, whatever country you are at, organize, become the leader and the role model that I've seen most of you on social media. Stand up, let us fight together, and thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mike. And please, Dr. Seifu, if you have any message to relay for Defense Force of Tigrayans, for Tigray people, for diaspora people in United Nations or any other countries. And also, if you have to say something about the World Food Program, I don't know, I haven't heard anything that they have already, they reach Tigray people to help them with the food for starving people there. So if you have something to say about these two, thank you so much. It's your turn, Dr. Seifu Mengesha. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I haven't spoke to my family in Tigray in the last 33 days. And when I go to work, all I think is about my family and my Tigray. And I know we will win this fight. And that is not because we're superhumans or we have different skills, but we will win it because we have the right cause, the just cause. An invader can invade for a short period of time, but will never stay forever. So the invaders will eventually leave, and the Tigrayans will come on top of this. So my message to the Tigrayans, whether they're in Tigray, Ethiopia, or elsewhere in the world, is that I know this is a very difficult time, a very emotionally draining time. I wish I was in Tigray fighting with my people, but I can fight from here too. So keep the fight. Don't give up. Speak to any governor or any senator or any lawmaker or any MPs or anybody that you think is influential and is representing you. Use social media, call them, email them, talk to them in person if you know any, and continue to fight. And my message to the Eritrean brothers or any other Ethiopians, including the Oromos who have been standing with us, is that keep standing for the right cause. And I know some Oromos are being targeted just because they stood with the truth. And the last message I have is to the international community, which is actually the most important one, because Abiy doesn't care about Ethiopians. He has showed that he doesn't care about Ethiopians. He has showed that when he was bragging about witnessing 113 conflicts under his watch during his 2.5 years in office, he was bragging about it. He was telling us that he's so experienced in managing displaced people. He was telling us that Ethiopia has displaced millions of people. And what is this 45,000 Tigrayans? It's easy to me. So this guy doesn't clearly care about Ethiopians. He doesn't, what he cares rather is about his power and the adorations he gets from the international community. So you know for a fact, this guy is a Nobel Peace Prize winner turned warmonger. And I will borrow the word from one of the European Union members. He is a reformist turned to be authoritarian, and he's a wolf in sheep's clothing. So this guy has clearly told us that he is a pathological liar that will never stop, and he is a dictator who wants to win. I don't know who he is winning against, but he wants to win under any cost. And he has said that officially. So don't witness this. Please act. And I know for a fact he will listen to the international community. But if he doesn't, then that is just, he is already showing us the last time of a dictator. When a dictator starts to kill just without any fear, he just starts to kill people without any discrimination even, then that is an evidence that he will go soon. So this guy is going soon. He is actually gone already in our minds, and we will prevail. Thank you.
One thing real quickly I'd like to add is that recently, I apologize for coming back on this to the point, is that we know for a fact now, it has been announced that he is about to receive nuclear bombs from Russia. Nuclear bombs. Folks, when we say mobilize, talk to your lawmakers, stand up united and speak up, this is very serious. This guy is losing this war on the ground. So now he's making every effort to bring like nuclear bombs from Russia so that he can simply destroy the region and destabilize the region, because he knows he cannot win the fight no matter what he does. So I want to like make it clear what we're talking tonight and what we'll continue to discuss, please make every effort to unite. We pledge to you that those of us in the United States and the West Coast particularly, we are forming a Western United States-based community to unite every person that is an immigrant from the Tigray region. Those of you from Eritrea, we openly invite you and welcome you in our communities. Those of you in the East Coast, I invite you and encourage you to do the same in Canada and Europe, based on your regions, based on your locations, but also at the international level. Know that this guy is now attempting to put his hands on nuclear bombs. And that is very, very dangerous situation that I want to just remind the audience. I appreciate your time. I know we have taken a lot of your time, but I just want to make that clear.
Wow. Well, I mean, that's why we are here. We need to be heard. We are telling the world to act, the United Nations, the UN, all the international community. Like you said earlier, in Rwanda, what happened in Rwanda, if they wanted to see another Rwanda in East Africa again, that's shame of them. Otherwise, we are here and we are giving them the information. We are telling them that what's going on in Tigray and in Ethiopia. So I'm so proud of you guys for being with me. You have mentioned everything clearly, and you have relayed a clear message for the world, for your own. You've been an advocate for your own people, for yourself, and I do appreciate that you been with me with Cyber Power of Tigray. Cyber Power of Tigray is very lucky to have you, and thank you so much for being with me. This is the first time, but we will have another time to discuss more about what's going on in Tigray and in Ethiopia, more but more other subjects matter.
We'll be happy to.
Thank you so much, and have a good night. Appreciate
Thank you.
it.
Thank you for having
Appreciate
us.
it. Thank you.
Bye. Bye.